Ha! All right, cool. Welcome to Test, ladies and gentlemen. All right, cool. So I thought I'd go back just kind of slightly before right now. I have a game, Wesley versus Magnus Carlsen, and this is from their prelims of the Magnus Carlsen Invitational. So not too long ago, like a week and a half, 2 weeks-ish ago, something like that. But I realized I hadn't done the game. So I was thinking of doing, a Magnus Carlsen and a Wesley game. So I figured I'd go ahead and grab, the most recent one they played against each other. Hopefully coming up in the next couple of, tournaments, they'll be playing some more games with each other because I think those are pretty good games that people like to see. Anyway, so I have a shout out. I forgot last video, so I apologize, man. So I got Alden Badota, Kamusta Kaibagan. I appreciate the support, man. Appreciate you watching my videos and stuff, the comments and everything. I got a lot of love for everybody that's supported me up to this point now. Because I'm not famous yet. So, people don't really have a reason to follow me at the moment. Because I'm not like a brand name, like a Gad Matter. Shout out to a Gad Matter. I hope to be on that level someday. And also, as you guys can see that watch my videos pretty consistently, I changed my whole layout. So I have a brand new background. And I did change the chess legend to Mikhail Botvinnik. Of course, you guys know he's the, world champion many times, during the time of Tal and Max Ive. We had some, right before like Tigran Petrosian and Boris Spassky really kind of took over the world championship scene. And then, of course, Bobby Fischer. So I kind of swapped some things. I got some stuff kind of tweaked. And, Von Peter Nabatar, bro, you are still the Lone Ranger with the donation. That was like, I think it was like two and a half months ago. Appreciate it very much, man. It meant a lot to me. So, I'm just waiting on, that next person to kind of throw some, little change down. Just a little bit, just a touch. But anyway, Magandang Umaga, Aking Magay Kaibagan, Magandang Hapon, Masaya Akong Mukiti Kang Muli, Maligayang Pagdating sa Aking channel. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Appreciate you guys very much. Anybody that's watching possibly from Norway, I'll say hello. God Morgan and Tack for coming along and taking a look at my video. Appreciate it very much. And for my people that speak Cebuano, Maayong Buntag or Maayong Hapon. Appreciate it very much. Kamusta to you guys. Appreciate you guys coming and stopping by. So I cover Tagalog and I cover Cebuano. So I'll be, extending my stuff out just a little bit more. And as you guys know, anybody who's watched my video to this point, I do chapter my videos. So I have my intro, and when I, speak to people in different languages, I have the analysis, and then I have the novelty. And just to let you guys know, I do chapter everything. So for those of you that might say I talk too much, some people appreciate it. But if you do want to skip forward and just hit the analysis straight up, like I said, I have chaptered my videos. All you have to do is click on that and it skips everything in the beginning. I don't normally talk for 3 minutes. I'm usually around like, 1.5 minutes to 1 hour, 1 minute and 45 seconds. But I would just like to let you guys know, that in the future in all of my videos, if you do want to skip past the intro, there is a way for you to click and do that. I have it down in the description. The timestamps for everything that goes on in the video, so you can skip all the way to the very end if you'd like to. So I appreciate everybody very much. If you guys are ready, let's go ahead and take a look and see what we got for this game. All right, so we got D4, D5, we got C4. So we have queens. This is initially considered a queen's pawn. Almost all games are gonna go C4. There's kind of some sidelines and stuff. There's some like E4s and even just regular knight to F3 kind of ready type situations and stuff, or there's a lot of different options that you have, but by far C4 is going to be the most heavily played move after D5. And then we see C6, so we have the Slav defense. And a lot of times, we'll see like knight to C3s. You can even see some knight to F3s. Sometimes a little bit of a kind of a premature A4 might come, just making sure that once this pawn is captured, you can push E4 or E3, and you can just go ahead and gobble that pawn back up, and there's not a way for black to actually defend, hold on to that pawn. Because even though it is called Queen's Gambit, this is actually called Slav. But even though these are considered Queen's Gambit, it's not a true Gambit, as you guys might know. So we have pawn takes D5. So now you have the Slav exchange, and then black just takes back with their C pawn. And then so we see bishop to f4. And we see knight to c6. Now, a nice little side variation that's very, very sharp. It's slightly worse for black, but it's pretty competitive, it looks like. Would actually be, instead of actually capturing back here, you could play actually knight to f6. And it kind of does give away a pawn, but it gives you some pretty legitimate compensation. So if we just follow like one of the lines, it would be pawn takes d6, knight takes d6, knight to f3. We see e5, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, pawn takes e5, we have queen takes d1, king takes d1, and then we have knight to g4. And as you guys know, we're trying to pick up this pawn as well as threaten the fork, if we were to be able to plop the knight down. So the king has to address that. You can also move the rook, but I mean, it's pretty much the same either way. And then knight would take on e5. And as you guys can see, I mean, you are down a pawn as black, but you haven't messed up your king. And you do have a lot of stuff coming. Bishop there, maybe castle and stuff like that. So it is pretty sharp. I'm not sure how many games have been played in that possibly, but there's some people out there that kind of like playing those gambit-y type situations. So like I said, after pawn takes, we saw bishop f4, we got knight to c6, we have e3, and then we had bishop to f5. And that was the point in the game that I actually want you guys to stop the video if you want to guess the move. There's two different moves that I was going to ask you guys about. First, see if you can guess what was actually played in the game. And then next, see if you can guess what an alternate very strong move is. And it's pretty interesting because in the when I was looking through the database, I didn't see this move very many times, but this is actually considered to be slightly stronger than what was actually played in the game. So like I said, if you want to go ahead and stop it and see what white plays in this position, but then also see what was pretty strong, go ahead and do so real quick. All right, cool. So what was actually played in the game is knight to c3. So it's a solid move. I mean, it's definitely not, bad. But what was suggested and what seems like it's stronger is actually queen to b3. It kind of puts a little bit of a question here. After knight to c3, you're kind of you're not damaging, but you're kind of threatening the d5 pawn. The bishop can come here if you see like some b6 situations come up, so it can get pretty dicey. But you probably see something like queen to d7. That'd be the most logical way to defend. And after bishop to b5, you see e6 and then knight to f3. And this was given, it was giving a little bit of a stronger, percentage in this particular position. But like I said, we did see knight to c3, and then we see e6. Knight to f3, we got bishop to d6. So we're going to go ahead and trade that off because it's not really beneficial for you to let that go and damage your structure. We got bishop takes d6, queen takes d6. We got knight to h4, and we have bishop to g6, and then we have bishop to b5. And now we have the novelty of the game. And as I tell you guys before, anytime you have like an initial move of a piece in an opening, and then you have a second move of a same piece, you're going to usually get into the novelty much quicker than normal, because those are just kind of moves that are like hard to anticipate, and they're also moves that don't generally happen. So, this knight to h4 move it's a very clear threat. I mean, you're just trying to damage their structure by taking a bishop with a knight. So that would be pretty beneficial for white. And so, like I said, after bishop to g6, bishop to b5, we do come to the novelty of the game. And so we see knight to f6. We got bishop takes c6, queen takes c6, rook to c1. We got castles by black. Knight takes g6 by white. Pawn takes g6, and we have queen to a4. So we're trying to get down into an endgame real quick. So queen sidesteps that. Magnus says, I don't want to trade queens. So we see castles by white. We got rook f to c8. Very principled moves. I mean, we have this rook on an open file, and now we have this rook on an open file too. So, usually you're going to see some doubling, which is what we're going to actually see. So the queen comes to b3. We see queen to d7, rook to c2. We got rook to c6, rook f to c1, and rook a to c8. Rook a to c8. And so, like as I said before, you guys, you have like, the rooks, both rooks on both sides, pretty much taking over. This is the only really logical place for them to be. So when you start understanding like where pieces are maximized the best, you start to really feel these types of moves. Now, it doesn't really super matter like kind of where you put the rooks exactly. But it's just the fact that you want to really try to get them on an open or a half open file. So it's just like, general principles of the game, stuff like that. So we see knight to e2. And we have a pretty clear like dream case scenario when you're playing this move. So Magnus Carlsen recognizes that and he plays G5. As you guys see in my videos a lot, you know, I'm always talking about like when you're playing against knights, trying to restrict the movement as much as possible with these like little pawn moves. You know, so as you see for black, you know, they'd really like to get into this square. So F3 would be a good move to play. Like I said, G5, basically, if you don't play G5, let's just say like black plays, just play like a random move. You know, the knight is going to come into here. And then if you just did something like that, the knight would come back down to here. And then best, you know, dream case scenario, this knight wants to get into E5. Because this is just a really, really nice central square and it's deep into the black's position. So that's basically what white is trying to accomplish. So G5 basically just makes that, you know, pretty impossible because it's going to be kind of hard now because you're going to have to try to, you know, do some kind of, you know, finagling this way or something. It just, you know, makes the knight have to work a lot harder to try to maximize itself because, you know, D3 and F, you know, D3 is not the best square for it to go to. Anyway. So we see H3. So, you know, white is trying to do their same kind of restricting moves and stuff like that. So we have knight to E4. We got queen to A4, trying to pin down the rook. We see F6, you know, just reinforcing this pawn we pushed up. And so we see rook takes C6, rook takes C6, rook takes C6, and queen takes C6. We see queen takes C6, pawn takes C6, and then we see knight to C1. There's many different types of ways you can play here. I mean, you can push F3 immediately, you know, move king to F2 after you do that. You know, you can try to see if you can put your, you know, your knight here. There's many different possibilities, but it is actually a fairly equal game at this point. So, you know, anytime you get down to kind of to an end game like this, it basically takes a blunder from somebody to kind of lose it because these are, you know, pretty drawn. I mean, everything's fairly equal. You guys each have a knight type situation. So the knight comes to D3. We got the king to E7. We got the king to F1. Got king to D6. We got king to E2. We got E5. We got G4. And G4 is pretty purposeful because, you know, once we do trade here, at some point, you know, white has their pawns, you know, freezing black's pawns pretty well. And then this is what this is doing as well. You know, you can always, you know, push here, but then you're going to push here. And you're going to be able to replace, you know, the pawn. So it's not going to damage your structure. So we see pawn takes D4, pawn takes D4, king to E7. We have A4. We have knight to D6. We got B3, like I said before, restricting the movements because, I mean, you know, it was already here, but we're trying to restrict the influence on the queen side. So, you know, this end game is all about trying to restrict, you know, your opponent's movements as much as possible and try to see if you can push yourself forward into the, you know, opponent's position, which you'll see is going to be very, very hard. The knight comes to F7. We got king to D2. We got king to D6. We got king to C3. And we have a knight to D8. And something I want you guys to notice too is this pawn, along with this knight, is preventing the push of this pawn. And so, you know, the king is trying to see if he can influence this a little bit. But once this king gets to B4, you know, there's just really not anything that, you know, there is to do. Or, you know, you can even push the pawn to B4. So the knight comes to C5. We see knight to E6. Knight takes E6, king takes E6. And as you guys can see, you know, like I said, you know, one of the sides would have to actually just blunder. So to be completely honest, it kind of seemed like they were trying to like play into a draw because it was later in the prelims. So I think they had already both clinched their spot. You know, so they just were trying to play unrisky. So we see B4. We got king to D6. We got king to B3. King comes to C7. We have king to C3. King to B6. King to B3. King to A6. King to C3. King to B6. King to B3, king to A6, king to C3, king to B6. And this is actually the position that they agreed to a draw by a threefold repetition. But like I said, somebody would have to pretty much like, you know, blunder the position. So if you weren't really familiar with end games and you were thinking, man, I maybe need to kind of bring my king over here. You know, there doesn't look like there's a lot that white can, you know, that black can do on this side. You'd be horribly mistaken because after you play something like king to D3, you know, black would play a waiting move, seeing if you're really going to commit to the king side. And if you do, you actually have A5 that's coming. And now the problem is, you know, black is creating a passed pawn if you don't take it. So your king is going to be really tied down over here. And then you can create more passed pawns here because this one pawn, you know, with the king, you know, these two pawns with the king's help are going to push through. So, you know, you would really have to take. And then after king to A6, as you can see, you're going to be losing a pawn. You know, there's not really a lot that you can do you know, after, you know, you see this here, because this pawn, once the king comes over, this pawn is going to push. And then you're just going to have a completely passed pawn. And you're just not going to be in time to take these pawns and just get your pawns through. So that's going to be a losing endgame for black. Or for white. So yeah, that is that game. I appreciate you guys coming through. Maraming salamat po sa nanonood ing aking mga video or aking mga channel. Appreciate you guys very much. And tack to anybody who might be watching from Norway or who speaks Norwegian. Appreciate you guys very much. You know, I might poll you guys to see like kind of what else you guys want to see kind of in between tournaments and stuff like that. But I think that Wesley versus Magnus Carlsen is always going to be pretty legit. So hopefully this video does pretty well. But I appreciate you guys coming by, and I'll see you guys next time. All right.